Saints front office are claiming they're going to be big time buyers in free agency next week. Kind of has the Saints fans and media types all standing in front of the windows at Macy's, window shopping for something nice. Reality of the situation, we should probably all go down the street to Dollar General and see what they have on sale. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So, look, this whole conversation is predicated on articles, videos, Twitter, just fans and media types both getting a little excited um, because Davante Adams cut by the Jets, Chargers are cutting Joey Bosa, and both names would make a lot of sense for the Saints. Honestly, Bosa played multiple 3 years with Brandon Staley. Kellen Moore was there for the last of it. Hell of a defensive end, hell of a football player. Davante Adams ties, of course, to Derek Carr that got him from Green Bay to the Raiders, but also significant ties to Aaron Rodgers, who's available as a free agent quarterback and looking like maybe going to show up with the Giants. But they've been laying out the arguments on why these two players make sense. And I can't deny both some ties to coaches or players on the team for both Bosa and Adams. Can't deny that, they're both pushing 30 or over 30 rather. Bosa will be 30 in July. Multiple years in the league, probably Hall of Fame type careers, I'm sure, or damn close to it, and still relatively productive. Bosa's a little bit of a special case, and we're going to talk about him in a minute. But look, say what you want about Davante Adams now compared to vintage Davante Adams in Green Bay. I think you could still expect him to show up on the Saints, catch for 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. And he's probably not the explosive separating player he once was, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't roll my worst cornerback out and try to guard him either. But one thing he seems to have shown, and I've seen this a lot, that he's developed into a really good receiver against his own, getting open and catching the ball, making contested catches, that sort of thing. Something the Saints kind of need at receiver. So yeah, he may not give you 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns anymore, but I think all of us would take 1,000 tough yards and 8 or 9 touchdowns, and especially maybe getting us a little better with red zone targets with him there. Makes sense. Bosa off the edge, so just when he's healthy, makes sense. But here's where the problems come in. When I'm reading these articles or seeing people talk on Twitter or watching a video from some of these media types, it always kind of comes around to, well, to what the market, if we get him right in the market, maybe we can get him here under a low salary plus the signing bonus and try to backload the contract or add incentives or you know kind of indicating the contract that we got Chase Young to show up here last year on. And I'm going, I don't quite know if that's the same scenario because Chase Young's market evaporated because of the potential neck injury that, we felt like, it's not a big deal. He played the whole season, but, his production wasn't what anybody was expecting it to be and could be, so I mentioned before, could have something to do with that. Could have something to do with we were using him. Combination, who knows? But I don't think Bosa or Adams falls into either one of those categories. Now, they were a lot of this speculation going on. I'm like, there's two places I know of where you can go and I'm not saying this is gonna be 100% accurate, but Spotrac and Pro Football Focus, PFF, both kind of do this for a living, and they do have kind of market projections for free agents. And you can kind of go look them up and see where they're at. So I'm like, let me go look up Adams and Bosa. Um, they weren't set yet. In fact, neither one had anything on Bosa, and believe it was Spotrac had done Adams, but PFF still hadn't. So I'm like, I can't do a direct comparison. I said, let me do the next best thing. Let me take 5 players, kind of their caliber, and just see what it averaged out to. What's their average, their expected average yearly salary. They're both sites kind of close to what they were coming up with. So I'm going, this may be a really good indicator what the market's going to look like. Wide receiver, I looked at Cooper, Diggs, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins. Kind of, I think, all fairly strong comps to where Adams is at, both in his career, his production, and everything else. The numbers that both sites were coming up with were really close to each other. So I just kind of averaged them out to try to get, well, what would be the average from each site and then the average of the combined site to see what it would look like. What I'm coming up with is wide receiver, an average annual salary that would be expected for Davante Adams would be 15.3 million a year. Now, Spotrac does not factor in what would be the guaranteed portion. PFF does, and it looks generally, by my math, it's always greater than 50%, obviously. And I didn't see where it got quite up to 66%, 67%, 2/3. I kind of called it, let's say 60%. Numbers kind of bear that out. So what they're expecting is for whatever that yearly average, that 15.3, take about 60% of that. And that's the number of guaranteed money. And then multiply both those numbers by the number of years in the contract, say 4, you get the total contract. So off those top 5 names, and they're kind of listed as the top 5 as PFF as far as grading of available wide receivers. And the money's real close between all of them. So you would be looking at, like I said, 15.3 million a year, about 9.1 of that in guaranteed money for every year, more or less, on average, that you want to give that player, that wide receiver, at that upper level. Saints can't afford that. We're still over the cap. We're still waiting to see what they're going to do with Derek Carr's contract. And it's going to take more moves after that, just to get the negative number to a positive number, out of the red into the black. And then you're talking about, well, to bring in Adams. I can't see where we're going to get the magical discount on Adams that everybody was thinking, well, if we get that, then we can bring him in. Bosa's no better. Now, I looked at Khalil Mack, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Chase Young, surprisingly. And then I'm going to throw in a name called Malcolm Koonce. You may not be familiar with him. He plays for the Raiders. He got hurt last year, I think even in spring training, but he didn't play at all. But prior to that, Malcolm Koonce was on the same trajectory that Jonathan Greener was last year, which is, and to make it even more at home for Saints fans, the trajectory that, I can't say that word right now, bear with me. Same one that Trey Hendrickson was on the Saints. As in, all 3 players were lower draft picks, showed up on a team. The team was probably not expecting all that much from. And over the course of that rookie contract, they just kept getting better every year and turning some heads. And obviously, we know in the case of Hendrickson and in the case of Greener in Houston, team that drafted him was like, nah, we don't think so. Let him walk out in free agency, got paid big money. Hendrickson had one hell of a career that's probably going to get him in the Hall of Fame after he left here. Greener blew up in Minnesota last year and was a force to be reckoned with on the edge. People have Koonce in that same category. So that's kind of how he falls in this conversation. And you look at defensive ends doing the same thing we did with wide receivers on those 5 names. You come up with 18.09 million a year and going with PFF's guesstimation of about 60% of that guaranteed, you guaranteeing about 10.9, almost 11 million a year. Per year, you want to sign him. Oddly enough, Chase Young shows up here. They both had the exact number for Chase Young, that his average annual expected salary would be 17.5 million. I'm asking you, Saints fans, do you want to bring Chase Young back under what These two sites are expecting what his yearly average is going to be on the contract that he's going to get this year from some team. Chase Young kind of fits because here's the thing with Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa was an absolute beast. Until about 2020, 2021, he started racking up some injuries. So Chase Young was a rookie in 2020. I went back and said, well, let's compare 2020 to last year between the two. So Chase Young was in the league 5 years. He's going to be 26 at the start. He's 25 now, going to be 26 at the start of the season. He got in 60 games, 131 total tackles, 22 sacks, 7 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. Over that same spirit of time with Joey Bosa dealing with some injuries, and it seems like he's just starting to come back from them because he actually got 14 games in last year, and I believe 5 or 5.5 sacks, somewhere around there. Kind of similar to Chase Young in a way. Well, in his 9 years, and he'll be 30, he's turning 30 in July, 56 games, only 4 less than Young played over that span. But I had 142 tackles, 33 sacks, 11 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. So 4 less games. His production was, I don't think it's even arguably, I think his production was better. So you get two websites who do this for a living projecting Chase Young, well, he's going to make about 17.5 a year over the life of this next contract that he's getting. Whether we think he deserves it or not, that's what they're projecting. And edge rushers get paid a lot of money. And so I don't see how even whatever ties that are sitting here, when you're looking at two players with very similar numbers, but one of them teams are going to be looking, yeah, we know the last 4 or 5 years were a little shaky, but it looks like he's getting healthy again where he was in the first 5 years of his career. We're definitely willing to risk a bunch of money to see if we get that guy to show up. And there's a little bit just of a pipe dream going on here when it comes to what the Saints are going to do in free agency and then throwing names like Bosa and Adams out there and expecting something. I think we're all setting ourselves up for failure. Now, it could still happen. But the reality of the situation is, I think there are some alternatives out there would make a lot of sense for the Saints that nobody's talking about. And one is left guard. Edge and wide receiver are needs for the Saints. To me, left guard is a dire need for the Saints right now. We've got question marks with guys that are returning. We know we're kind of getting, okay? There's no question mark at center. I mean, McCoy, if he's not the best center in the league right now, he's one of the best. And like, this isn't just me as a Saints fan saying it. Go read up on the guy, how the rest of the league perceives him. So you're stable and you're fine there. Opinions vary on Ruiz, but I don't think anybody's disappointed in him in what he does produce. I think maybe some people are just disappointed that he's not living up to their expectations of a first round pick, whatever that looks like. But all in all, I don't think we're bad there at it by any stretch. We were serviceable on the tackles. The rookie looks like he's going to belong in the NFL. We're just not sure if it's going to be left tackle. Penning finally turned into something, but in last year of his deal, it's like, do you want to keep trusting this? The name that I keep going to is a left guard. He's available. Makes a lot of sense, although I don't think Philly's going to let him leave, but we don't know. They might. Is Mekhi Becton, who they signed for next to nothing. Because everybody was ready to say he was a bust from the Jets, I believe, had him as a right tackle. They moved him to left guard and kind of worked out well for everybody involved, let's just say. 26 years old, both PFF and Spotrac have him around 10 million a year, which under PFF's estimation would put it about 6 million a year in guarantee. I'd have no problem of trying to find the money like for somebody like him. And he had previously 3 years, 4 years experience at right tackle. Just because a tackle struggles, gets moved to the interior, doesn't mean he can't go back and suddenly realize, or however it works out, that develops into being a really good tackle. I think Laramie Tunsil is the poster boy for that right now, because when you think about Miami drafted him as a tackle, wasn't working out, kind of moved into to the interior at guard, played both guard and tackle, kind of a swing lineman. Houston makes the big trade for him. Everybody thought they were crazy. I don't know. It's kind of worked out pretty well for Houston on that left side with him there. This is not exactly a gamble. You're pretty sure he's going to be able to handle left guard. But you might come back around to him finding himself as being the tackle everybody thought he was going to be when he was drafted. Tevin Jenkins is another one in Chicago that falls into the same category. Spotrax got him in about the same range as Becton at 10.3 million, PFF 13.3. Chicago's desperately, as we saw the trades they made this week, trying to rebuild that line. I don't think they're going to let Jenkins leave the building, but you never know about the NFL, how the money works out, who they can keep, who they can't, that you can suddenly jump in the game. So you're probably looking anywhere from 10 to 13 million a year, anywhere from 6 to 8 million guarantee per year you give them. 27 years old. These are the kind of guys that I'm looking at and going, if you're going to spend that kind of money, because the only way you're going to be able to do that, the big prorated signing bonus that creates dead money, or you're going to just have to backload the hell out of the contract with guaranteed money that would ultimately be through renegotiation extension at some point, not this year, but in later years, would be vaulted forward into a signing bonus and prorated out. So you get to the same place you would be giving that all to them in 2025. Just might take a year or two to get there, but they know they're getting their money. It's not like they're playing for free. So to me, as an alternative, that would make way more sense than throwing potentially a lot more money around two players. You don't know how much longer you're gonna have them around, potentially creating, dare I say it, another Cam Jordan situation that you're gonna have to be dealing with in 2-3 years, like you're doing now with Cam. I'd rather take that chance on one of those left guards. There's a couple other left guards out there. Will Freeze is one, but he's a right guard. But there's a few more that kind of fit in that category. Maybe the fit. You might be taking a little more chance of trying to do it a tackle, but you could. You take one need off the board for the draft. I'm okay with that and doing it reasonably priced. The other alternative that a lot of people are bringing up, and I say this as an alternative, although I think they're bringing it up, is go sign, say, one of those two guys in free agency and bring Paulson Adebo back. And I have yet to hear anybody saying other than pay Paulson Adebo, bring him back, which I have no problem with. I would really like to. But again, is anybody looking at what his potential market's going to be? Spotrack's calling it 11.1 million a year. PFF 13.3 million a year. He's right in the same range as those two guards we were just talking about. By comparison, Asante Samuel's name has come up as someone who, well, if we don't bring a Debo back, Samuel, again with ties, played for Brandon Staley with Chargers. I believe he's 25, 26, a good age to bring in and sign in free agency, but they want to bring up those ties again and maybe you get the discount. Spotrack's pegging him at 11.5 million a year, PFF at 14.5 million. Actually, a little higher than Adebo. I don't think these ties in these scenarios that people are talking about are I think it's going to trump money. I really, really don't. When you're looking at guys like that in a league who's willing to pay premium for positions like wide receiver, defensive edge, and cornerback. I don't. I'd like it to. Any of these moves that we're talking about, I don't have a problem with. I just don't think it's as doable as everybody's trying to let themselves believe it is. And dear God, I hope Mickey Loomis isn't one of them. Reality, just grounding yourself in reality, going, there are, I don't want to say Dollar General because I don't want to degrade an NFL football player, but let's just say cheaper, not quite as talented versions of these players we were just talking about that are going to be available will still improve your roster without throwing yourself right back into the salary cap mess you're trying to get out of while trying to win, and, making that happen. I get it. But if you can magically bring Bosa and Adams in, let's just say, I still don't think you've done enough to even get your roster remotely close to winning the division and making a playoff run. Maybe you get a little lucky, maybe it happens. But the way your cap's sitting right now, as of, like I said, Friday morning, we are still way, way over with a lot of work to do. And then trying to talk yourself into going, well, maybe we get a discount. Maybe we get some type of approve it deal from these guys. Spotrac and PFF are saying you probably won't. I hate to give you a reality check on a Friday afternoon, but that's the reality. We're just gonna have to deal with it. So before I go, let me bring it up. Best way to support the channel is blackandgoldnetwork.myshopify.com. Right now, discount code MORE19, as in Kellen Moore, our head coach, 19th one in Saints history. Go ahead, type that in and get your 19% discount. First time here, I want to thank you for joining. Please like, share, subscribe. You know, all the stuff that makes the algorithm happy. Next week, I think we're going to be talking more and more, and possibly over the weekend, depending what happens, more and more about the free agency situation. That's kind of where we are headed with the Saints. By Wednesday, we've got to be under the cap. All plays into it. So it's going to be an interesting development, and we'll be talking about it more. Till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out, and who dat.